Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going deep on something I think we all deal with but don't always love. Feedback. And I don't mean that screeching microphone kind, but the kind that's supposed to help us, get better and grow.
Definitely something everyone's familiar with.
For this deep dive, you gave me some excerpts from this book, So Young, which means precision feedback. And this book is all about, changing the whole feedback culture at work. And honestly, it's refreshing. Because who really enjoys those formal performance reviews?
Yeah, you've hit on a big point that the book makes right away. We've kind of been trained to connect feedback with anxiety just because of, bad experiences we've had before, especially those dreaded performance reviews.
It's almost like our brains go into fight or flight mode when someone even says the word feedback. Like we're dodging a tiger or something, but instead of teeth, it's criticism about our latest project.
The book actually uses that same comparison to evolution to explain why we react like that. It's wild how those primal instincts kick in even at work.
So how do we get past this fear of feedback? Because it is important for growth, but it just doesn't seem like people enjoy giving or receiving it.
That's where this idea of a feedback movement comes in. The book isn't just saying we should tweak how we give feedback. It's saying we need to completely change what feedback is.
Okay, now I'm really interested. So what is this new definition, the one we should all be using?
The book defines feedback as clear and specific information that's sought or extended with the sole intention of helping individuals or groups improve, grow, or advance.
Wow, that already sounds much more positive.
Yeah.
It's not about tearing someone down. It's about helping them, improve and get ahead.
Exactly. And the book even has this table that really clearly lays out what feedback is and what it is not. For example, feedback is about helping someone understand their impact, but it is not about, labeling or judging them.
That's a really important difference. I've gotten feedback before that felt more like a personal attack than, actual helpful advice. It just makes you want to shut down.
Yeah, that kind of feedback doesn't help anyone. The new definition is all about shifting the focus to growth and understanding, which is much more likely to create positive change.
And, speaking of positivity, the book really digs into the power of positive feedback, which I found really interesting. Is there any, evidence that it actually makes a difference?
Oh, absolutely. There's tons of research on the benefits of positive feedback. One study they talk about in the book, Corporate Leadership, found that managers who gave consistent positive feedback saw a 39% increase in performance.
Whoa, that's huge. But we should make a distinction here. There's a difference between genuine positive feedback and just, throwing out empty praise.
Right. And the book gives a great example. Just saying good job isn't nearly as effective as saying something like, I really appreciate how you took the initiative to reorganize the filing system. It's made things so much more efficient for everyone.
Right. I see the difference. It's about being specific and pointing out the actual impact of their actions, which makes the feedback so much more meaningful.
And this is where things get interesting. The book brings in some research from John Gottman. The marriage and relationships expert.
Wait, really? I'm not sure I see the connection to workplace feedback.
Well, Gottman's research found that stable, happy marriages have a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions. So for every criticism or negative thing you say, there are 5 positive interactions.
Wow. So are you saying that at work you should give 5 genuine compliments or pieces of positive feedback for each piece of constructive criticism? I never would have thought to use relationship advice at work like that.
It's an interesting connection, isn't it? It shows just how important positive interactions are for building good relationships anywhere. It creates a foundation of trust and goodwill.
Which brings us to another important point the book makes. Trust is the foundation for all of this to work. If you don't trust the person giving the feedback, you're not going to be open to it.
That's exactly right. The book explains it as our brains being wired to fear being alone. So when we trust someone, we feel safe and more open to hearing what they have to say.
So building trust is absolutely crucial if we want to create a culture where feedback is actually effective. But how do you even do that, especially at work?
Well, the book has some really helpful tips. It suggests things like being human, showing vulnerability, and consistently demonstrating goodwill. And it really stresses the importance of making an effort to connect with your colleagues.
So it's not just about the feedback itself, it's about the relationship and making people feel safe and respected.
Exactly. And once you have that foundation of trust, the book introduces what it calls the 3 F's of feedback: fairness, focus, and frequency.
Okay. Let's break those down. Fairness seems pretty straightforward, but I'd love to hear how the book defines it.
Well, the book emphasizes that fairness means making sure that feedback is unbiased, accurate, and delivered respectfully. But it recognizes that our own biases can often get in the way.
You mean like unconscious bias? I know I've been guilty of that before.
We all have them. In fact, the book even mentions this tricky one called the bias blind spot.
Bias blind spot? What is that?
Basically, it's the idea that we think we're less biased than other people. We can spot it in others, but we don't see it in ourselves.
Wow, that's a tough one. So how do we overcome these biases to make sure our feedback is fair?
The book suggests approaching feedback with curiosity and a desire to learn rather than with judgment. Have open conversations and really try to understand different points of view.
So it's about turning feedback into a two-way conversation, like a collaboration, not a lecture. I like that. And what about the second F, focus?
Focus is all about delivering feedback that's short to the point and easy to understand. Think of it like a snack, not a huge meal.
That's a good analogy. I've definitely zoned out during feedback that felt more like a college class than a helpful conversation.
Yeah, it happens. The book says feedback should be given in small bites, not long critiques.
That makes so much more sense.
Ugh.
Okay, and lastly, frequency. I think I know where this is going.
You're probably right. The book is all for getting rid of those annual reviews and instead having regular ongoing feedback.
Doesn't that feel so much more natural and less scary? It's like checking in with someone, not putting them on trial.
Exactly. It's about making feedback a normal part of work, not a big, stressful event.
Okay, I'm totally on board with this new approach. And speaking of natural and less scary, the book introduces this idea called the art of noticing, or FAN. Now, this is something I'm really interested in. So tell me more about this FAN thing. It almost sounds like, some kind of meditation practice.
Well, it definitely has that aspect to it. FAN is about developing the ability to observe things without judging them. Like just seeing things as they are, not how you want them to be or are afraid they might be.
It's like you're putting on some special glasses that just let you see things neutrally. You're taking in the information but not immediately saying, oh, that's good or that's bad.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. And the book says this skill is super important for feedback. When we observe without judging, we're more likely to understand the situation, the other person's point of view, and then we can give feedback that's actually helpful.
I can see how that would make a big difference. I know for me, if I even sense a little bit of judgment from the person giving me feedback, I just get defensive and I don't really listen.
It's a natural human reaction, and FA helps create a safe space where people can hear and process feedback without, triggering those fear responses.
So how do we actually practice this FAN thing? Do we have to, sit and meditate or something?
It's actually a lot more practical than that. The book has 10 commitments of FAN, which are like guidelines for learning how to observe things without judgment.
Can you give me some examples of those commitments? What are some of the main takeaways that stood out to you?
Sure. The first one is, we commit to noticing to help others and ourselves understand, learn, and grow. It's a good reminder that FAN isn't about criticizing, it's about growing.
I like that. It changes the whole reason for observing. Instead of looking for what's wrong, you're looking for opportunities to get better. What's the next one?
Commitment number 2 is, notice without judgment, share objective, fact-based insights. This goes back to separating observation from evaluation, like we were talking about before.
Right. It's all about sticking to the facts. Describe what you see without adding your own opinions.
Exactly. And number 3 is, base your noticing on first-hand observations, not hearsay or assumptions. So no gossiping or guessing. Just share what you've seen yourself.
Yeah, that's important. I think we've all been guilty of making judgments based on rumors or what other people have said.
It's an easy trap to fall into. But FAN encourages us to be aware of where our information is coming from and only talk about what we know for sure.
I love these FAN commitments. They give such a clear structure for being more mindful and helpful when we observe things. I can see how this could change not just feedback, but all kinds of interaction.
Absolutely. It's a skill that you can use in so many situations, both personally and professionally. It helps communication, makes relationships stronger, and creates a more positive and productive environment.
I'm definitely going to try to use FAN in my own life. I'm going to print out those 10 commitments and put them somewhere I can see them as a reminder.
I think that's a great idea. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit and talk about becoming a seeker of feedback. Remember how we said that in this feedback movement, it's crucial to actively seek out feedback?
Oh, yeah. I love that the book challenges the old way of thinking, where feedback is something that's given to you usually by your boss. It flips that around and encourages us to actually ask for feedback. which is so empowering.
It puts you in control. You're taking charge of your own growth.
And I bet it helps build trust and strengthen relationships too. Like if you show someone that you value their opinion enough to actually ask for it, that can go a long way.
Absolutely. Seeking feedback shows that you're humble, curious, and willing to learn, and those are all things that make people trust and respect you.
And didn't the book say that companies that have a culture of seeking feedback get some pretty amazing results?
That's right. The research shows that when companies shift to a seeking culture, it can lead to better performance, more innovation, and a stronger growth mindset among employees.
So it's a win-win for everybody. The employees grow, and the company as a whole benefits from a more engaged workforce.
It creates a great cycle of growth. And here's another interesting thing. The book specifically talks about the benefits of getting feedback from your peers.
Peer feedback. You mean not just from managers, but from your coworkers and teammates.
Exactly. They say that feedback from your peers can be super valuable because it gives you a different perspective, and it can feel less intimidating than getting feedback from someone who's above you.
I get that. I know personally I'm a lot more open to feedback from a coworker I trust than from my boss, just because there's not that same power dynamic.
Right. And there's research to back that up. The book talks about a Globoforce study that found that peer recognition was really powerful. Employees who got regular recognition from their peers said they felt more appreciated, valued, and motivated.
That makes sense. So how do we actually become good seekers of feedback? Are there any tips from the book that we can share?
There are some great ones. First, be specific. Don't just ask, how am I doing? Ask focused questions like, can you give me some feedback on my presentation skills? Or, what do you think about how I'm approaching this project?
Right. Being specific gives the other person a clear idea of what you want and helps them focus their thoughts.
Exactly. Second, give context. Explain why you're asking for feedback and what you're hoping to get out of it. You could say something like, I'm trying to get better at public speaking, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on my delivery.
Giving context helps the person understand your intentions and tailor their feedback to what you need.
Exactly. And finally, be open to direct feedback. Don't get defensive or try to justify yourself. Just listen and take in the information.
It's about creating that safe space where the other person feels comfortable being honest, even if it's not always easy to hear.
And remember, as the seeker, you get to choose what to do with the feedback.
You can use it to make changes, or you can decide to ignore it. It's all about being in control of your own growth.
Okay, now let's talk about the important role leaders play in creating this new feedback culture. The book makes it clear that it's not enough for leaders to just say feedback is important. They need to actually seek out feedback themselves and be open about their own growth journey.
That makes sense. Actions speak louder than words, right? If leaders are walking the talk, it sets a great example for the whole organization.
Exactly. It shows everyone the feedback is valuable and that it's a tool for growth, not a weapon.
And it helps create a culture where people feel safe to share their ideas without being afraid of being judged.
Imagine if all leaders took this approach. Imagine a workplace where everyone sees feedback as a gift, a way to work together and help each other improve.
That's a pretty inspiring thought. Okay, I think we've covered a lot today. Let's take a minute to go over the key things we learned from our deep dive into precision feedback. Wow. It feels like we've really uncovered some incredible insights into how we can completely change how we think about and deal with feedback.
It has been fascinating, right? We started by talking about that almost primal fear so many of us have when it comes to feedback. But if we understand where that fear comes from, we can start to break it down and build a healthier, more productive approach.
And that's where this whole idea of a feedback movement really hit home for me.
Yeah.
It's not about making a few little changes. It's about completely shifting how we think about it and making a culture where feedback is seen as a good thing, a way to grow and connect and not something that stresses us out.
And the book's new definition of feedback really gets at that. It's about information that's clear and specific, given with the goal of helping someone get better and move forward. There's no judgment or personal attacks in that.
Yeah, and the book gives us some really practical ways to make that happen. Those 3 F's, fairness, focus, and frequency, give us a good framework for giving and getting feedback that's both helpful and respectful.
And remember that amazing 5-to-1 ratio from Gottman's research. Trying to have 5 positive interactions for every piece of constructive criticism can really help build strong, trusting relationships. It's not about avoiding difficult conversations. It's about building a foundation of goodwill so those conversations can be productive.
Speaking of relationships, embracing being a seeker of feedback is so important. Instead of waiting for feedback to come to us, We can actually ask for it from our colleagues, our peers, even our bosses. It's about taking control of our own growth.
It's a powerful change in perspective.
Yeah.
And when you combine that seeking mindset with the art of noticing, or FAN, it opens you up to a whole new level of learning and growth. Learning to observe without judging changes everything, not just feedback, but all parts of our lives.
It's like we've been given this awesome toolbox, and now it's up to us to actually use the tools. But it all starts with leadership. If leaders don't model this new feedback culture, if they don't seek feedback themselves and are open about their own growth, it's going to be a tough road.
Right. Leaders set the tone for the whole organization. But imagine what would happen if all leaders in all industries embraced this new way of thinking about feedback. Imagine if everyone saw feedback as a way to make positive changes, a way to innovate and connect.
That's such a powerful idea. And I think this book gives us a map for how to get there. It all comes back to that question we asked before.
Yeah.
If our resistance to feedback is rooted in a fear of being isolated, what does that tell us about the kind of workplace we should be creating?
I think it shows that a truly great feedback culture is about more than just techniques or tools. It's about building a place where everyone feels seen, heard, and appreciated. A place where people feel safe to try new things, to make mistakes, and to learn and grow without worrying about being judged.
It's about creating a sense of belonging, a sense of connection. And that leads to more trust, more collaboration, and more innovation. It's not just about making people better at their jobs. It's about creating a work experience that's more human and fulfilling for everyone.
And that's something worth working towards, right?
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, we encourage you to take these ideas and make them real. Change what feedback means to you. Become a seeker of feedback. Develop that art of noticing, and help create a workplace where feedback is celebrated as a powerful way to grow and connect.
Because when we change how we see feedback, we open ourselves up to a whole world of possibilities.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the world of precision feedback. Keep those feedback loops open, and until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep those conversations going.